Welcome to the channel. Quick, engaging, and straight to the point, that's what you'll get here. If you love content that keeps things interesting without wasting your time, hit subscribe and enjoy the ride.
The text loaded itself onto his screen at 6:47 on a Tuesday evening, while my husband was taking out the recycling. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. His phone was face up on the kitchen island, and the preview appeared before I could look away. Finally got rid of that conference call from hell. Does she still think you're working late? God, Craig. She makes it so easy for us. The sender was saved as Heather Alderton Proj. I stood at the sink with the faucet still running. I read the message once, then again. Then I turned off the water, dried my hands on the dish towel, and picked up his phone carefully. When Craig came back inside, I was holding it out toward him. Heather from the Alderton Project is texting you about me, I said. I kept my voice even, the way I keep it even when I'm presenting numbers to a room full of people who don't want to hear what the numbers say. She says I make things easy for you. What does that mean? He glanced at the screen. Something moved through his expression. There and gone in less than a second, quick enough that I almost missed it. Then he smiled. She's just a client, Helen. We were venting about a long day. You're reading into it. She said she makes it so easy for us. Craig took the phone from my hand and slipped it into his pocket. You always do this. His voice carried the particular patience of someone correcting a recurring misunderstanding. Can we just eat? You always do this. He said it without irritation, without guilt, without anything except the mild certainty of a man who expected to be believed. And I understood in that moment that this tone was not new. I had heard it before. I had accepted it before. I had walked back into the kitchen and started another conversation. And let him off the hook more times than I could now count. I nodded. I put dinner on the table. I asked about his day and he told me. And I listened and we talked about weekend plans, and whether we needed to call the building about the leaking hallway faucet, and neither of us mentioned Heather again. That was 9 months ago. This morning, Craig came home to changed locks, 3 packed bags waiting on the front steps, and every document I had spent 9 months collecting, arranged across our dining room table. He couldn't stop shaking when he read what I had left for him. But I'll get to that. Before I continue, if you've ever been told you were reading into things when your instincts were telling you the absolute truth, this story is for you. Subscribe to the Concealed Bonds. You won't want to miss what comes next. Let me tell you who I was before that Tuesday evening, because it matters. I'm 38 years old. I've worked as a senior financial analyst at the same consulting firm for 11 years. My job is to look at numbers and find the story they're telling, the discrepancy that doesn't surface until you know where to look, the pattern that only becomes visible when you examine the full picture, instead of any single line item. I'm good at it. I'm methodical. I'm patient. I have never once let something stay hidden in a spreadsheet when I was looking for it. Craig and I met at a professional conference 8 years ago. He was an architectural project manager at a commercial real estate firm. Charming in the specific way of people who present to clients for a living, good eye contact. Easy smile. He made you feel like the most interesting person he had spoken to all day. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. We married on a Saturday in October at a small venue outside the city, 60 guests. His mother cried during the vows, and I believed with everything I had that we were building something that would hold. For 6 years I had no reason to think otherwise. The Alderton Project had been Craig's flagship account for nearly 2 years. Heather ran the development side for her family's real estate company, a major commercial renovation downtown, the kind of multi-year contract that defined a project manager's career. Craig had mentioned her name dozens of times, always in the context of work. Always interchangeable with any other client name. She had been furniture in the background of his professional life, unremarkable enough that I had never thought to look at her twice. After Tuesday evening, I looked at everything. I didn't cry that night. What I felt wasn't grief or panic. It was a very specific kind of cold clarity. The same sensation I get when I'm reconciling accounts and something doesn't balance. The numbers are wrong. The story doesn't hold. Now I find out where. Craig fell asleep within 20 minutes of getting into bed. I lay beside him in the dark. And I thought about the phrase he had used. You always do this. He had taken my reasonable concern and framed it as a character flaw. Something I should work on. Something to be embarrassed by. And I understood, lying there in the dark, that this reframing had been working on me for a long time. He had been using my own willingness to second-guess myself against me. And I had let him. Not anymore. In my line of work, I understand how money moves. I understand how people hide things in financial records, and I understand how to find them. This turned out to be significant. I didn't need sophisticated technology. I didn't need to hack anything. I needed what I already had. Access to our shared accounts, 11 years of professional training, and the patience to read every line. I created a new folder on my personal laptop and titled it simply Review. Over the following 2 weeks, I pulled every financial record I could access and began building a timeline. The joint credit card statements were the first place I looked. I had managed our household finances for years. Craig handed me receipts, and I handled the monthly reconciliation. The patterns were so familiar to me that anomalies stood out immediately. The Aldercroft, a boutique hotel 15 minutes from our apartment. Charges appearing on Friday evenings, 11 times over 10 months, amounts ranging from $290 to $380. I cross-referenced those dates against Craig's shared calendar, the one we'd maintained for years to coordinate our schedules. Every Aldercroft charge aligned with an evening he had entered as client dinner, Alderton. I photographed every statement. I built subfolders organized by month. The most significant thing I found came 3 weeks in. There was a minimum payment leaving our joint checking account each month that I couldn't account for. A small amount, easy to overlook if you weren't doing a proper reconciliation. I traced it back to a credit card in Craig's name only, opened 13 months ago, a card I had never seen and never been told existed. He had funded a private credit card using our shared income. I requested the statements. What they contained was the architecture of a second life, hotel reservations, restaurant charges at places I had never been invited to, a jewelry purchase from a boutique downtown, $580 for something that had never come home, weekend bookings at a property 2 hours outside the city. On a weekend I clearly remembered Craig, describing as a project site visit in the northern counties. I documented everything. I continued making dinner. I continued asking about his day. I continued nodding at whatever explanation he offered for his late evenings, his tired moods, his phone held face down on every surface in our apartment. The performance was exhausting in ways I hadn't anticipated. We attended a dinner party at his colleague's house during my second month of observation, and I sat across from Craig and laughed at his stories and touched his arm at the right moments. And afterward a friend of his told us we seemed so solid, so easy, together. And Craig reached under the table and found my hand. I let him hold it. I smiled at his friend. I said, "We're very lucky." I meant it in a way no one in that room could have understood. The message that changed the shape of what I was doing came 6 weeks into my investigation. Craig had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went to answer the door. A delivery. He was gone less than 2 minutes. His screen lit up while I was rinsing a glass. Does she even look at the credit card statements? You've literally been running a whole separate card for a year and she doesn't know. She trusts you so completely that she's never once looked twice. I'm not sure if that's sweet or just sad. I turned off the faucet. I stood very still. Then I picked up my phone, photographed his screen, and put both phones back exactly where they had been. That evening, something shifted inside me. Until that moment I had been gathering evidence for the purpose of understanding the truth, before I confronted it. But reading Heather describe my trust as a punchline, as something she and Craig had been privately laughing about, I understood that understanding the truth was not enough. I wanted them to face what they had built. My closest friend Jillian had worked in corporate IT security for nearly a decade. She was the person I had called from a hospital parking lot when my mother's diagnosis came in. She knew when something was wrong with me, even when I was trying not to show it. She called on a Sunday afternoon. Craig was supposedly at the gym, though I had stopped believing that months ago. You sound different, she said. Not upset different, careful different. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, okay, do you have access to his cloud backup through your shared plan? She walked me through it that evening. Accessing the device backup legally through our shared family account, pulling the message threads. The process was straightforward. The content was not. I read the conversation between Craig and Heather from the beginning, 11 months back. The early messages were professional, warm but appropriate. The shift happened over a period of weeks, gradual enough that you might have missed it if you were only reading one exchange at a time. I wasn't. I read all of it. The line I kept returning to was Craig's response, when Heather asked whether I suspected anything. She doesn't. Helen's exceptional at her job, but she trusts me completely. She's not the type to look for something she's not expecting to find. He had described my trust as a gap in my defenses. He had assessed my confidence in him and identified it as the thing that made me vulnerable. And he had said it to Heather with the comfortable certainty of someone who had tested this theory and found it held. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened it again and kept reading. I contacted an attorney named Ms. Crawford through a referral from Jillian. Her office was downtown, 14th floor, the kind of space that is understated in a way that costs money. She was composed and unhurried. And when I set my folder on her desk and she opened it, she gave it her full attention without commentary. 20 minutes later, she looked up. This is exceptionally thorough, she said. He has no idea. None. Good. She picked up her pen. Let's talk about what protecting yourself actually looks like. We spent nearly 2 hours going over our finances, the joint accounts, the retirement portfolios, the investment accounts we had built together over 6 years of 2 professional incomes. She explained what the documentation supported, what I was entitled to under our state's statutes, and what steps we could take before Craig knew anything was happening. Because I worked in finance, I understood more of the framework than most clients in my position probably did. That helped us move quickly. Before I left, I gave her one piece of information that altered the shape of her strategy. Heather is married, I said. Her husband's name is Roger. They have children. I don't believe he knows anything. Miss Crawford studied me. Do you want him to know? He deserves to, I said, the same way I deserve to. She wrote something on her legal pad and nodded slowly. That changes some things. Roger's social media profiles were public. He coached youth soccer on weekends. He posted about projects around the house and family trips and his kids' school performances. 6 weeks before I found him, he had posted a photo from a friend's wedding. His arm around Heather, both of them dressed up, and the caption read, 9 years and I still like you more every day. I looked at that photo for a long time. I thought about the version of myself that had existed a year ago. The one who had said nearly the same things about Craig. The one who left his coffee on the counter each morning, who planned vacations to places he'd mentioned wanting to visit. Who trusted him so completely that he sat across from his mistress and described that trust like it was a weakness worth exploiting. Roger deserved to know. I assembled the evidence carefully. Hotel records showing Craig and Heather checked into the same room on the same dates, the message thread confirming the nature of their relationship, the credit card statements for gifts Craig had purchased that never came home. I included the message where Heather had called me easy. I thought he should read that one. I sent it from an anonymous account on a Sunday evening. I didn't have to wait long. Within 48 hours, Craig's phone was receiving messages from Heather, with an urgency entirely unlike her usual tone. I watched it through the backup access. Roger knows. He got everything, receipts, messages, hotel records. He's already called my father. Heather's father was her company's principal. The Alderton project was a contract worth several years of Craig's career. Over the following week, the messages made clear what was unfolding. Roger had not kept this private. He had gone directly to Heather's father, and Heather's father had not separated the personal from the professional. Craig's firm received formal notice that the Alderton contract was being terminated. The letter cited loss of confidence in the project team's professional judgment. No specific names were given, But Craig knew exactly what it meant. He came home that evening, looking like the structural supports had been removed from underneath him. I made dinner. I asked how his day had gone. He said it was complicated. He didn't want to talk about it. Of course, I said, whenever you're ready. Without the Alderton account, his firm's finances took a significant hit. There were conversations about restructuring. 6 weeks later, Craig was offered a demotion or the option to resign. He resigned. He told me it was a mutual decision, that he had outgrown the role, that something better would come. I listened carefully and expressed sympathy and said all the right things, and did not tell him that the circumstances had a precise origin point. I could document to the day. I chose a Tuesday morning in late March. The night before, Craig had a dinner he said was with a former colleague, and came home at 11, tired and quieter than usual. He fell asleep quickly. I lay beside him for the last time, and listened to the sound of his breathing, and thought about the woman standing at the kitchen sink 9 months ago. Reading a text message that told her exactly what she was dealing with, and choosing, in that moment, to be patient. At 5:30 I got up. I made coffee. The locksmith Gillian had recommended arrived at 6, and had the locks changed within 20 minutes. He handed me 2 sets of new keys and left without asking any questions. Craig's bags were already packed. I had done it in stages over the previous 2 weeks, while he was out or asleep. His clothes, his books, the framed photograph of his college friends that had lived on our bedroom shelf for years. 3 bags by the front door, neat and organized. On the dining room table I laid everything out, the hotel records, the credit card statements, the message threads, the receipts, the complete timeline, 9 months of it, organized by date, and in the center, a manila envelope, the divorce filing, the asset documentation, the letter from Ms. Crawford. On top of the envelope, 1 sheet of paper. You told her I trust you completely. You were right. I did. And while you were both laughing about how easy that made everything, I was reading your statements and your messages, and building the case that ends your marriage this morning. I have been 9 months ahead of you. I hope it was worth it. Your bags are at the door. You have 30 minutes. Craig arrived at 8:19. He tried his key twice, then knocked. I counted to 10 before opening the door. His face when he saw the suitcases was the face of someone running rapid calculations that weren't coming out right. His eyes moved to the dining room table. The color left him so quickly, it was almost strange to watch. He moved toward the table slowly, picked up the hotel records, stared at them, set them down, picked up the credit card statements, read through several pages without speaking. When he reached the printed message thread, the one where he told Heather I trusted him completely, that I wasn't the type to look for something I wasn't expecting, he set it down without touching it again. Helen, his voice was wrong. I can explain all of this. There's nothing to explain, I said. It's documented. He tried anger because anger is what people reach for when they've run out of anything else. You went through my accounts. You mirrored my phone. Do you understand what you've done? That is a complete violation. You built a private credit card funded by our joint income and used it for a year, I said. I'm a financial analyst. I found the minimum payment in our checking account and traced it backward. Everything else followed from there. The anger left him the same way the color had, fast and complete. He picked up the manila envelope, with hands that weren't steady. Opened it. Read what was inside. When he reached my note, the paper moved with a visible tremor. He looked up at me. 9 months, he said. You knew for 9 months and you never said anything. You told her I trust you completely, I said. That was true. And then I found out who you were, and I spent 9 months making sure I understood this full picture, before I said a single word. Helen, please. He set the papers down. Please. I know what I did. I know there's no excuse. But we have years together, we have a life, and I am asking you to please. You told her it was funny, I said. That I made it easy. That I never looked twice. He didn't answer. 23 minutes, I said. He stood there for a long moment. Then something in him simply stopped resisting. He gathered the bags, one at a time, carrying them down to his car. On his last trip through, he paused in the doorway. I never thought you would do something like this, he said. I know, I said. That was your mistake. I closed the door. I turned the new lock and stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the building settle around me. Then I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of my coffee and sat at the table where I had spent 9 months, doing the work that brought me to this morning. The table was clear now. The documents were filed. The apartment was quiet in a way it hadn't been in a very long time. Jillian texted at 9 asking if I needed company. I told her noon. Bring something from the bakery on Clemont. We'd sit together, and I'd finally tell her the whole story from the beginning. Not the version I'd given her in pieces over 9 months, but all of it. From the moment that notification appeared on his phone, to the moment I turned the new lock. She replied in about 10 seconds. I have been waiting 9 months to hear it. I sat in my kitchen in the quiet of a Tuesday morning, and, for the first time in almost a year, I wasn't performing anything for anyone. The woman Craig thought he married. The trusting one, the one who never looked twice, the one who made everything so easy. She hadn't existed for 9 months. What she had been was a performance, patient and precise, given by someone who knew exactly what she was doing. He just never thought to look.